show today was brought to you by Vitapler E-Boost Gum. With no pill to take or powders to mix, Vitapler E-Boost Gum is a first-of-its-kind energy rave supplement that provides magnesium, electrolytes, and antioxidants while you chew. Vitapler is the perfect complement to my active lifestyle, whether it's at the festival, on the road touring, or hitting the gym. Chew Vitapler and dance with confidence. Use code Lizzy Jane for 10% off any order. Well, Marissa, thank you so much for coming on today.
Of course, my pleasure.
Yeah. For everyone listening, this is actually our first installment of the Discover Denver series, and I'm so excited to have Marissa Napoletano. I pronounced it right.
You got
right?
it. You nailed it.
I got it.
You're
I nailed it. On, you are not only just a regional artist and illustrator, your work is kind of all over, but you are located here in the Denver area.
Yeah.
We are at the Mirus Gallery, and you have some artwork downstairs.
I do, actually, yeah.
And it's going to be here for how long?
It opened a couple weeks ago, and it should be for about a month.
Amazing. Yeah. I remember I'm a DJ artist, so we kind of like exist in that same little entertainment circle, creative circle. And we had a friend of ours playing here that was staying at the Art Hotel. And I walked into the Art Hotel and I started looking at all of the art, and like I just started seeing your name pop up in like, because it's not like little tags, but it's like, I feel like seeing either your username or just seeing like your artwork in general. Like I've seen it kind of like sprawled across the cities.
That makes it sound like an assault.
No. But it's amazing because there's not too many places in the United States that like have this like such an eclectic culture that's accepting of all of these different types of art. Yeah. So how long have you been in Denver?
So I've been here about 5 years. I mean, that's one of the main reasons I moved out here is because I could just tell I'd actually never been to Denver before I moved, but I just sort of had a gut feeling, and I could tell from just a cursory glance that they were super supportive of artists and creatives and had a focus on just local and diversity, and those are things that I really value. So
100%.
Like, let's go. Let's do it.
And I think everyone who comes here doesn't really realize it until they're here. Like you get a glimpse of it. Like I always knew that like music was a big thing here and art and culture, but then coming here and seeing the different districts and seeing how like up here on Broadway has all of these different studios and art like kind of pop-ups, and then you have like an actual district dedicated to art, the RINO Art District. It's so cool.
Yeah, I'd never heard of that in any other city. And when you're here, you can really tell how woven it is into like the culture of what Denver is, which is the coolest part.
Yes, and I'm seeing so many friends of mine from LA and New York currently kind of aspire to come here because
that's so cool.
And I think that's so cool because Denver's never been focused on as like the really like it place to like quote unquote like make it as a creative.
Yeah.
But I feel like here there's kind of that like pro-con muddy space that there's no expectations. You can just come here and do what you want, and people are super respectful of it. They're really supportive of it. Like I've never been to a place like Temple where you have an art gallery and you have a loft and then you have like a spaceship 2,000 capacity club like next door.
Like a little goulash of people
and like the markets and like the pop-ups and all of that stuff. So how did you get started in what you do currently? Like, I would love to know some of your background.
Yeah, for sure. So I've been an artist basically my whole life. I've always known this is what I wanted to do, you know, as unrealistic as it seems, you know. I went to art school. I was fortunate enough to live in Italy for a while and do sort of an apprenticeship there, and that really sealed the deal for me. I was doing more illustration, more commissions and publishing things. And then when I moved out here is when I started to do murals and more large scale stuff because it was so conducive.
Yes.
You know, the environment is so supportive of that. And it's really, I mean, street art as a popularized medium has become like a crazy trajectory recently. And I was like, I gotta get it up.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've been fortunate enough to be full-time for the last, it's actually my 3-year anniversary this month.
Oh my gosh.
Artiversary, yeah.
So people work their whole life and they can't make that full jump.
Exactly. It's a struggle, but I'm super blessed. And as like I said, I've always been creating, but now I get to really focus on it.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's so amazing. And Italy, oh, what a good place to really go and like completely immerse yourself.
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm like a pretty, I think, level-headed person. I just like wept. I was like, this is it. I can't do anything else. You know, for me, especially, it's not just the root of art in a lot of ways, Renaissance, which is kind of a style that I resonate with, but being Italian, it was like my heritage.
Yeah.
So I was like, this is it.
This is it.
Yeah, there's no other way.
So going back to school, did you go to school in Italy or were you here and then you did the apprenticeship in Italy?
So I bounced around a little bit.
Okay, I did too.
I moved to Boston when I was 18 and loved it. Ran out of money.
Yeah. Boston's fun.
Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah.
It's expensive. You know, I did the whole living in a closet thing, trying to make it, go to school. Ran out of money, so I went back home. I grew up in Connecticut, so I went back home to Connecticut to the Hartford Art School.
Nice.
I did, a study abroad program in Italy, and then went back to graduate from the Hartford Art School, and then have been back to Italy a bunch of times. So.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And is that like where you say like your styles are, like for people listening who may have not seen your art yet, you know, what kind of, I feel like definitely you being full-time and committed, you wear a multitude of hats. Like I think any creator does, like, hey, I can do this, but I can also do this, 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 and this.
Oh yeah.
Just to make sure I'm paying my bills and able to reinvest into what I really want to do.
For sure.
You know, what would you really pocket your work in if there were like baskets as far as like illustration, you know, oils, all that?
I definitely do oil painting the most for small scale work. For murals, I'm doing brush work. When I first started murals, I was doing spray paint, but I found out I'm actually allergic to spray paint.
Oh my God.
I know, which was a crazy journey. I digress. But so now I brush paint everything, which actually speaks to me more because I do have that traditional sort of Italian background. And I think now I've really found my niche and where I feel most like comfortable and where I'm saying the things that I want to say the most are in a combination of realism and fantasy.
Okay.
And sort of mixing these like old traditional techniques with sort of contemporary vibes.
I love it.
Yeah.
It's very much in my mind. It's like an analogy for like, you know, appreciating like classical work and how it's done, but also like paying attention to like technology and incorporating that in what you're doing now.
I mean, you know, as a creator too, like it's so organic that you have to be able to just feel it and let it grow and be its own thing and not be stuck. I mean, I probably am like an 80-year-old Italian man trapped in this body. But I love I'm so inspired every day by what people are doing.
That's amazing.
I want room for my stuff to grow. So.
Absolutely. And like, as far as inspiration goes, I know from like my point of view, like every kind of artist has to be in a certain pocket to really feel that like, hey, like not only am I in the right mind state and ready to create, but I also have something motivating me and inspiring me to create.
Yeah.
How do you kind of go about your creation process for creating new pieces of art?
Yeah, it's so crazy. I mean, like we were talking about, there's definitely that element being like the jack of all trades. You know, when I was starting out, people would come to me and just be like, I want a painting of my dog, like riding a horse into Vietnam. And I'm like, sure, I got you. Like, let's do the Dom Dog. Yeah. But in the last couple of years, I had some crazy just life things happen. I got really sick and just was like, you know what? If I don't have the time, if I don't have you know, the space to do all the things that I want to do in the future, I might as well just do it now. I might as well just do the things that speak to me and say what I want to say in the way that I want to say them and not waste the time. And so it's really just experiences. It's like trying to express the things that I'm going through at the same time having it resonate with like just the general human experience. That's why a lot of my stuff is a combination of like, you know, portraits and human elements with nature elements, and I use them to express kind of the different things that I'm going through, and I feel like, especially in the last couple of years, we're all kind of going through.
Yes.
Yeah, and it just, I feel like it's, you know, I want it to be relatable.
Absolutely.
Also, you know,
and everyone
say what I
like you're doing it for yourself.
It's also cathartic.
Yes. Like I feel like it's definitely in any way, shape, or form, any type of like expression is like should be for yourself, like definitely. Okay here, but it's also for like the consumers and the people who follow you,
right.
how are they going to relate it to what they're currently going through in their life or their own life experiences. And I totally get the grind of, okay, I'm making the full dive of, okay, can you make this song for me? Can you do this art? Can you do this? Can you do this? Yes, yes, yes. But is this like artistically fulfilling to me and what I want to do?
Right.
So I'm pretty curious on the back end of kind of what you said, what we've all kind of been going through in the past few years. I moved here from Florida. So Florida yes. I'm very, very happy here. I'll just say that. But
I just got back from Florida. I'm like,
I'll always appreciate Florida. I feel like Florida is a very good place to like vacation to and just kind of like let everything go and then you leave and come back to real life. But if you can't leave, you kind of end up running in a circle and going, why am I here? Why am I here? But always will love where I grew up, 100%. There's definitely pockets of Florida that are really developing into very cool places like St. Petersburg, very art driven. Awesome. But then, you've got your Miamis, you got your Orlando's, 100%. So it was hard because we didn't really shut down during COVID. We kind of just existed,
You guys went for it.
Oh, yeah. And Denver, I know, really did.
For sure.
Given that what you do for, your line of work, I would assume that the majority of time you're really working alone. Mm-hmm. Did anything really change for you during that point in time, whether it was like a mental change or like a physical change of like, okay, wow, this is something I have to kind of adapt to?
Yeah, I mean, it was a weird time for me because I had slowly been making the shift to full-time for a while, and then COVID hit, and I had, like, just gone full-time, so I was like, here I come, world. Oh, no. Yeah. No, I don't. I'm going to sit down. Mm-hmm. And it's hard for me because I am such a social person, and I'm such an extrovert, and I feed off the energy of other people.
Yeah.
And so on the one hand, it's really hard to be confined to the studio and have to just focus on that and have no like outside influence or those connections with other people. But at the same time, that also meant that art was the way I was connecting with other people. And that's why I do it. I mean, my favorite pieces aren't necessarily the ones that I think come out the best. They're the ones that I feel like really allowed me to connect with people and say something, get feedback, and just establish this sense of like community and positivity, which is really cool. So yeah, it really forced me to focus on what I wanted to say, sort of hone that message, and also just, I think, reiterated how important art is to everyone.
Absolutely.
I mean, I don't want to self-aggrandize. I mean, I'm
it
biased,
is.
but it is. And I think people really realize that during the pandemic, how much they need it in their life.
Well, you lost sports. You lost, like, when you look at, like, the general person, like, I feel like probably you and I are so, like, head over heels in the art world and so many different kind of little pockets, whether it's film or art or music or touring or this or that. And it's like, you definitely lost concerts and the general consumer lost sports and you lost your regular kind of like social endeavors. But then this whole kind of like digital world of streaming and digital world of connecting and art really took, in my opinion, that forefront of like,
for sure.
Everyone was doing these digital concerts, everyone was doing this, and it's like you as an artist, that was like your main way of communication. And I'll always say that like music and art is like a universal language.
For sure.
It's like one of the only things that I could not speak the same language as the person standing next to me, but we could interpret something the same way or completely different ways and look at, the same painting, which I think is just something that really came to the forefront during COVID. And it was just so interesting to see everybody kind of adapt to how they needed to, really in order to survive for a lot of full-time artists that, didn't really have too much of a livelihood that was correlating with, the lifestyle that they had anymore.
For sure. It's that, and it's also, I think, at a time when people don't have the money, they don't have the stability that they normally would. A lot of times people look at art and music and entertainment as like this frivolous,
It's the extra.
It's the extra. Yeah. And I'm like, you know what? I understand why it's really hard for people to spend money on it during a pandemic, but it's also a shift in perspective where maybe it isn't so superfluous to your everyday. Maybe it is essential
100%
for you and your life. And so, it's just finding that balance between being able to support yourself and sort of flex and, worm your way into the different ways that you need to be able to express when you need to adapt, but also just getting people's feedback and having them really appreciative, which is cool.
Absolutely. And as far as like feedback goes, do you have kind of like a core group of like people who you have connected with here within like the art space, or do you kind of just like do your own thing? Like, how do you go back? Because like I'll send like my songs. Like if I have an album or if I have an EP, it's like, hey, I'm gonna send this to a select few group of people. Some people who are technically knowledgeable in music, and some people who are just consumers, and I just want to know like how it makes them feel, like is there anything that you would like to hear more of, is there know this and that. Do you do that in the art world?
A little bit. I mean, I think that is one of the main things that I've been looking for. When you're in art school, you're lucky enough to be in an environment where you're surrounded by all these people who are so passionate. They're so knowledgeable and willing to give feedback and have this sort of loop of a conversation where everybody really wants to help everyone. And once you leave, it's really hard not to have that. But, I mean, like we talked about, Denver is such an art city that it was really easy for me to kind of find a tribe here and find people that I trust. And, we talk to each other and show each other work and give each other sort of honest, like really supportive feedback. And especially in an industry where it is so competitive, can be so dog eat dog. We're all fighting for the same jobs.
Yeah.
It's so nice to find people that I have here who just want to see each other succeed.
And it's so cool.
Rare. And it is. And I think it speaks to the attitude of the city a little bit too, because I come from Boston and New York, and that East Coast attitude.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
And I love the honesty, and I miss, some aspects of it. But Denver definitely has a lot of people that are more laid back, more supportive. There's just a loving energy here, which is so nice.
And especially you made a very good point coming from just the East Coast in general. You were in a city. I was in still East Coast, still fast moving, but not full on city. But same thing. When we moved out here, I don't know who it was. I think we were at just a restaurant, and somebody came out, and the person who was waiting on us said, welcome to Denver. You're from Florida. Before you do anything, you need to take a very deep breath, hold it for 60 seconds, and let it go. Because everyone here is not going to move as fast as you want them to.
Right.
You're not going to get shit done or get answers as quickly as you want them to. People are here to enjoy life. And that was the main thing that we noticed off the bat is we didn't feel like people were living to work. We felt like they were working to live. And it's kind of crazy in somewhere that is really aligning with how expensive rent is getting and how expensive just it is to live in this city.
Yeah.
The different perspectives that people have on living here, because it's very comparable to places like Boston, to places like New York in certain areas. And it's people aren't at each other's throats. And I feel just a sense of relaxation in a lot of places that I go where I can still keep my own train moving. And I think especially as being an artist, and doing this full time, you really have to be diligent and dependent on yourself to keep yourself on a certain schedule. Yeah. But when I'm not doing that, I feel like I'm actually can go places and get rejuvenated
and enjoy it.
And do you go up to the mountains at all? Do you
I do, yeah.
So beautiful.
Yeah. I mean, I've lived sort of in the middle of nowhere, upstate New York. I've spent some time in Nova Scotia.
Oh, yeah.
I've also spent time in major cities, and that was part of the reason I moved here too, is there's such a great combination of enjoying life, but also the amenities and the sort of drive that a city can have.
Yes.
Which is great. I mean, like you said, when you're a self-starter and you have to run your own business and make things happen, you need some of that East Coast energy to just be let's go, let's hammer it out.
Time can just go by.
It's a hustle. We got to do this. But at the same time, I mean, to have such positivity and such I think that is part of the European attitude that I loved being in Italy is here a little bit, which is let's have a conversation. Let's have a cup of coffee. Let's enjoy, the fact that we have 300 days of sun, just and really enjoy it.
And there is a duality here where exactly what you said, you have that city feel. I always say this is a small city because it's big enough to have districts.
Yeah.
But it's small enough that if I wanted to walk from Laramie in the RINO district all the way to Laramie Square.
Oh, yeah.
All the way to the Bronco Stadium, I could.
Right.
And I think that's so cool. And then if I want to escape, I can drive an hour and 10 minutes
Right.
and I'm at some of the most beautiful peaks in the whole entire country.
Right, in the middle of nowhere.
And I've never yet had the pleasure to like go overseas, but that's so much of what I've heard from the culture there.
Definitely.
Is that, you know, just the way that like government and like social life has structured their lives,
Sure.
it gives them time to really embed themselves in family life and enjoying life and,
Definitely.
you know, pursuing their own passions. And I do feel like a lot of the times when you sit down with people, especially in entertainment and the arts world, it's kind of like, what can I do for you? What can you do for me?
Right.
How can we exchange and help each other, which is wonderful and it has to happen. But, you know, are we really like enjoying each other's company? Are we really feeling like, okay, like let's just talk about art to talk about art and we're not like talking about like a potential job or talking about this. And it very rarely happens, and I've seen it happen here more than other places.
That's awesome.
And kind of when you said, you know, it can kind of be dog dog where like there really is only so many jobs. How do you really like get jobs in the art world? Go through that process for me, because like you have like your art downstairs, like are you approached, like do you have to pay to sell your art? Like how does that work?
Yeah, I mean I wish I was
I wish.
This is multifaceted.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, I mean it really is. I have a lot of irons in the fire, and that's sort of my approach to it. The reality is that a lot of days it's just a circus disaster. It's just like it's a total carnival.
Yep.
But yeah, I think there's a lot of different things that I like to do, and that helps me out because I am happy showing in galleries. I'm happy doing private commissions. I'm happy doing murals, whether it be festivals or private commissions or for businesses or for the city. And so I'm fortunate in that I'm just as comfortable in all of those situations.
Yeah.
And so I explore all those different avenues. I think it's definitely about making connections. It's definitely about putting yourself out there. You know, a big thing that I've been working on myself and that I tell a lot of other people is just knowing your worth.
Yeah.
That's been a struggle for me. It's really hard. It's, you know, there's such a fear involved in the art making process, which, you know, you're not only putting yourself out there because it is such a personal thing, but it's also, you know, having faith that what you're doing is worth saying and worth doing, and, you know, asking for enough to make rent.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's, you know, like you talk about these conversations between artists. I think that's part of a unique creative process, is that when you are an artist, when you are a musician, it's something inherently in you where you're like, I love this. And you have to love it to be able to commit yourself to it in the way that's necessary. You know, I'm not saying that accountants aren't like, accounting is in me.
Like, no, 100%.
It definitely takes a lot of just, you know, pounding the pavement and reaching out. You know, in the beginning, the first couple of years, I was applying to a lot of open art calls, and I still do that. Going to festivals, which was huge because it's that missing piece of like the social quality of getting to interact with all these other artists, and it's such a fun time. I mean, nobody's, you know, out at a festival just trying to one-up someone else, or like, you know, they're not there to use other people. It's really just a great community. But it also helps to meet those other artists and see what they're doing and learn from them. And I've done a lot over the last couple of years in that regard to sort of teach myself. But I'll just be honest with you, I'm not a business-minded person.
Yeah.
Trying to navigate.
I don't think most artists are.
Yeah, just trying to navigate. Like you said, it is so digital now. Instagram's such a huge thing, and marketing
TikTok,
yourself, and
all that stuff. Yeah,
maybe it doesn't come out this way, but I hate talking about myself. I hate having to promote myself. So that's something that I've really had to learn, and that's been one of the hats that I've had to take on and be better at, is definitely doing like the website stuff and the Instagram stuff and the like, you know, that part of it.
It's hard. It's like a hard reality to realize that like, okay, if I want to do this, this is now kind of like part of my job.
Right.
This is a small aspect to it, when I think more than not, I have DJs on here, and like in our industry, it's like it's come to a point where you can make or break your career off TikTok, which is crazy.
Definitely.
We've seen people with little to no following and hardly a discography of music really pop off on TikTok, and then they're selling hard valued tickets, and it's crazy. And the majority of people who sit down with me just go, I wish the art could just do the talking.
Right. Exactly.
Let me be creative. And whether that's, usually there is a visual element alongside songs, especially in like the electronic dance music community. We all have the big LED boards behind us that have all the, whether it's Blender artwork or Illustrator artwork, stuff like that. And a lot of them is like, hey, like we created this collective collection of songs and records, and now we have these music videos to go with it, and now we have this artwork to go with it, and all of these conceptual pieces, and now I have to turn around and go, please listen to my music. This is everything. Yeah. And it's a lot.
It is. And I think, it's not conducive to an art making process, especially when I take a while to do it. I toil away, I'm like, I'm going to spend a couple weeks on this oil painting, get it perfect, which is not, it's not made for an algorithm. My process isn't, doesn't fit into that mold of like posting all the time or being, entertaining or like being splashy all the time. And so it's been a big part of it to try and navigate that and, make it work to my advantage, but also not let it sacrifice what I want to do just to make it, fit into the mold and make it,
Yeah, like conducive to, because the algorithm, like conducive to the algorithm, I should say. Like the algorithm is always going to be changing, and we could wake up one day and TikTok could be gone. We could wait, those things to me, they're all temporary.
Yeah.
Whereas like when I distribute a song on X amounts of platforms, or I burn a vinyl, or I do something and somebody decides to collect that is like permanently there forever. Unless Spotify goes down tomorrow, which God forbid, I hope that doesn't ever happen. It's there. Where it's like your art, like when it's done and it's in a collection or it's in somebody's home, like it's there. It's going to be there for a very long amount of time.
Yeah.
And that really, I feel like, is just a testament to like how artists' minds work, and a lot of it, I'm very nitpicky, I'm very attention to detail. There are some people and colleagues that I know can just bang stuff out. Like I'm sure you have colleagues that sit down and they start a painting and in the morning they're done.
Yep.
And that's just not the way that my mind works.
Exactly.
When you do start certain pieces of art, would you say, you're always going to spend a few weeks on them? Like, how does that process go? Is it different for each piece, deciding on the size, like all of that?
Yeah, it definitely depends. It is hard, when you look around and you see these people who bang things out, or like, and it is, it makes more sense financially to be able to do that, or to simplify, or to, be able to churn and burn.
Yep.
But again, like you said, that's just not the way my mind works, the way, your mind works. And so, it definitely, there's certain things where the realities of making deadlines and, trying to get things done in a reasonable amount of time, it plays into the process. But, if I had my way, I would just give every piece, the time that it deserves. And, of course, this is such a cliche, but I'm never going to be like 100% happy with every piece. But
nope.
I hate the element of feeling rushed, or like it's a product that you're just trying to push out the door. And that's why I really appreciate other artists and people who spend the time to understand what goes into it.
Yes.
And to be like, this is a labor of love.
It is.
Like, and it is different too. The pieces that I make for myself, the ones that I'm going to show in a gallery that I just have in me and I just want to say, are always going to be a little bit different than the pieces that are just, someone else has a specific vision. That's always going to take a different amount of time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah. Just depends.
It just depends. Absolutely. And I think that's how every like kind of record or new piece of art is approached with like, I feel like everyone kind of has like their method to madness, but it does vary. And there's just so many factors that are different. Just kind of going back to what you're saying too, I've like tried to orientate my mind in like a business fashion from here or there, just on like being educated on what certain roles in like our industries are supposed to do. But that's just not where my mind goes most of the time. And but I'll always say, like what you said about the accountant, like the amount of time that we put into what we do and the amount of work that we do for absolutely no return, financially, profit, X, Y, and Z. If we went in any other field, we'd be like millionaires. Like we really would. Like we're the time, like you think about how much people work like 40 hours a week and they can make X amount of money, you know, in a fiscal year off a salary. And it's like, we'll put in 80 hours a week, walk away with $0.
Can't do the math.
But you can't do the math because it's really hard to conceptualize. But it's like that feeling of being fulfilled and that feeling of like, I do just feel like that's how when artists and when, you know, musicians and stuff, when they really do pop off, that's where you kind of start to see the back end come in because it's so many years of work. Exactly. I'll always say like in entertainment, like I feel like you look at like at least 8 to 10 years of really just putting your head down, figuring out what you want to do, honing your craft, establishing this is going to be my style. This is what people are going to know me for. Yeah. And then building on that and connecting with the right people in that specific lane and getting to a point where it's like, okay, this is a breakthrough piece. This is a breakthrough record kind of thing.
And that's the thing I tell people, like, you have to be okay with that. And that goes back to, you know, what we were saying about, you know, working to live or living to work. You know, I think a lot of times with musicians and artists, like, it is such a hustle. But at the same time, I'm not toiling away at a job that I hate in order to enjoy my life. Yes. I get to do what I love every day. So as long as it takes, as hard as it is, it doesn't matter.
And we're going to live longer. I feel like we're going to live longer. I feel like there is a lot of stress with it.
I've gotten a lot of sun.
Yeah, right? You're like, oh. It's crazy, too, because what you said about, like, the Denver sun. When I moved here, I was like, oh, no way, it's going to be sunnier. It's so much sunnier than Florida. Yeah. Like, Florida can, like, fuck off. Like, it's literally, like hurricane raining like all the time. Yeah, literally. And it's just so beautiful here all the time. Even days like today, like, I know we've had kind of a crazy little winter sprout. Yeah. Everyone who has lived here for a long time said this was kind of an abnormal winter. Do you agree with that?
Oh, yeah. Okay. I mean, even only being here, 4 or 5 years, I'm like, the winters are a joke.
Yeah. No, they really are. Because I've done like East Coast winters when I was like living in DC and stuff. It's nasty. And it's like, you can't escape to the mountains. You can't go anywhere where it's like, wow, this is beautiful. You're like, no.
It's abrasive. It hurts.
It hurts. It literally hurts.
Like, why are you doing this to me?
and it's just kind of like this safe haven that I feel like not everyone really knows about yet. Yeah. And that's why I love that the majority of people here like are transplants, but I feel like we got like the secret password. We're like, hey, like come, like people don't really know yet.
I don't correct people when they're like, oh, the winters must be brutal in Denver. Terrible. I'm like, they're the worst.
It's crazy. And I feel like so many like creative just startups, even in like the technology world, kind of do that. And as far as like you go, like, do you do anything digitally? Because like I see like on your Instagram and everything, like I look at that and it looks digital. So are you doing any things that are coming across like on a digital platform?
Not really. I mean, I am very old school, like I said, I'm very traditional. I really value just like getting my hands physically into things. That's like a huge part of my art making process. I don't look down at digital art at all. I respect it, and it's just not something that has ever been intuitive. Yeah, or like 100%. Yeah, come naturally to me. It is an unavoidable part of the this day and age. So I do all of my mock-ups digitally. So I show people, for commissions what things are going to look like. I do, I've done the logo thing, and I've done the, all that stuff. I've had my hands in a little bit of everything, but my preference is definitely just hands-on, old school. Like, I'm like finger painting.
No, 100%. But there's like a realness to that, and especially kind of taking AI into the situation that has now kind of come on the table, whether it's like the chat GTP or like even like I have people in my lane that are like really large acts, like Alice in Wonderland, people who come and play like Red Rocks every year, and when they start kind of messing around with like AI cover art and AI this and AI that, and even on our end, we're at a point too where there are AI generators that can make songs, and I don't think they're great, but they're there, and it's not like all of these companies that may be playing, publishing deals or split deals to these musicians to get their music in the background of a commercial or the background of a TV show. it's not to say that those don't equate the quality of those.
Right.
Or couldn't be very easily replaced, and then they get to X off certain money they're spending. Right. It's a crazy kind of concept that's being developed, but I do feel that like hand-painted oil art, this like the sculptures that people do, like the artwork that are on these walls, I think that that's going to be really hard to replicate long term.
It is, yeah. It is. And I think, it is so scary because the majority of the world, it is so much easier for them to just be like, I'm going to buy this quick thing. It's cheaper. Mm-hmm. It's, I want, they had the first book covers and things come out that were generated by AI art. Yep. It's so complicated. I mean, between the copyright and just it's rough. It's rough and it's scary. But at the same time, art is something that is always going to have a human element to it. There's always going to be a part that's just like, you can't, I like to think, and maybe I'm saying this to comfort myself,
it's
but
scary.
I like to think you can't plug in a lifetime of experiences and of human emotions into a computer. There's just something, I like to think there's an X factor in the process that a computer is never going to be able to get to. And I know I can tell when someone has put their heart into something.
Yes.
Or when it means something to them. I don't know if that's because I'm also an artist, but anything that's like music or sculpture or, fashion, I can tell when somebody has really made something that comes from their soul.
Yeah.
And it's so much better.
It's so much better. It is.
So that's the part that gives me faith, and I'm hoping like...
And I think other people see that too, especially on like a consumer basis. And do I think it's going to make certain things like in life easier? Yes. I think that like the real kind of test is just going to be like, how do people value and appreciate things? Because I 100% agree with that. And I think just in my conversations with other people in other kind of fields of entertainment, it's like, it's here and it's something we're going to have to like learn and adapt to. A lot of people kind of compared it to, not the transition, but when they like lost CDs and it went to a digital streaming space. This is just something else that's going to be incorporated, but it's going to take such a long time for everything copyright-wise, imprint-wise, all of that. And I do think that now more than ever, like a uniqueness in your style and you putting everything into your work, whether it's writing music or painting art or doing something in the digital space, means more now than ever because it's not just going to be easily replicated.
Right. I mean, I hope that's the case. Even now, I think people look at my process and can sometimes say like, wow, it's so archaic. And I'm like, what are you talking about?
Really?
Like, what are you saying? This is so crazy. But, you look at art that was made centuries ago and it's still appreciated. It's still it's still groundbreaking.
I think of
in
songs
2023.
Yeah, exactly. I think of songs that like now you just have and I don't know if you guys give this the same terminology. Would you say like a piece of art has like a shelf life?
Yeah.
Okay.
I would say archival is sort of like if something has like staying power.
Yeah, like staying power. Exactly. Because like now, there's so many musicians, there's so many artists. So it's like there's millions of songs released every single day.
Definitely.
But you turn on a commercial or you'll turn on the radio or I'll walk through a theme park or do whatever, be in a restaurant, and they're still playing the Beatles and they're still playing songs from the 60s, the 70s, the 80s. And it's like, it's because it was good music.
Right.
It was good music that stood the test of time.
Just plain and
where
simple.
If, there's music that's released now that don't make it through, not opening weekend, but like release weekend, they'll get a ton of traction. And then, the interest in it won't really be there anymore. Yeah. And the same thing happened with movies. You'll get movies that'll stand the test of time. Then you'll get movies that they've spent $300 million on and they make $28 million in the first opening weekend and then it dies.
Yeah.
So would you say that happens with art? I don't know. It's hard because it's like the art's not going away and there's no one that's like, hey, like we're physically invested and now we're not kind of thing.
I think there's definitely trends. There's definitely like a temptation to create something that's going to be loud or, monetize things. And it's hard not to fall into that. And I see a lot of artists that unfortunately do sometimes, and they want to be able to sell themselves in a certain way. The hope is that you're creating something that does last. And, you know, to me, it's never been about fame or name recognition or anything like that. It's just like
it's how you have to approach it, or it'll drive you crazy.
Right, but there is so much, especially now, you know, in the street art game and with social media, art is becoming cool, which is awesome.
Which is amazing.
And it's so, I mean, I love that because I think, you know, there has been a time where it was very like just
like, oh,
whatever.
Yeah, no, 100%.
Yeah, or like, you know, something that people didn't realize is kind of everywhere. And now there's this like, you know, there's drone shots of spray painters, and that was a big thing when I had to quit spray painting. People were like, oh, it doesn't look as cool that you're brush painting, and like all these crazy things that you don't think about. But at the end of the day, like you said, it's just about the art. That's just all it is. I mean, and you can't let anything else affect it, or any other worries or outside things. And I think, you know, some of my favorite artists over the years, I can tell it's just about the art for them.
Yeah. So who are, you know, some of your like main inspirations? Like, do you take inspiration from like, I know you said that you kind of attach yourself to a little bit of like classical Renaissance kind of style paintings. Like, are you like an Andy Warhol? Are you like a Picasso? like out of the artists that kind of stood the test of time, would you say that, you know, you're really inspired by a specific one, or is it like a filmmaker, a musician? Where do you get that from?
Yeah, I mean, all creatives, I think there's so much overlap between every industry.
Yeah,
and
there is. 100%.
Yeah, you know, I've done sculpture. I did, you know, a series of like wedding dresses made out of toilet paper in high school.
Crazy.
Like, you know, I've done a little bit of everything, and so I'm inspired by a little bit of everything. And I am just as excited about like, you know, a Caravaggio as I am, you know, like a human or an Inti, or like these people that are doing stuff right now.
Yes.
And so it's so cool that can coexist and be just as impactful.
Yeah.
Not just to me, but I think to everyone. Like people, I still look at, there's a reason people still go see David, you know, and we'll always go to see David. My boyfriend. Love him.
Yeah. You know.
At the same time, get really excited about the things that people are coming out with. And it's so easy to say, you know, it's impossible to create anything new. Everything's been done already, or nothing is truly original. It's just not true.
Yeah.
You know, I see stuff that I'm like, I can't believe your brain thinks that way. And I can't wait to push myself to think in different ways that I haven't.
It's just pushing yourself, really. It's pushing yourself like past those boundaries. Because especially now, and I'm sure it's very similar like in your lane, where if I want to paint something like this other artist, I can go and find a TikTok, or I can go and find a YouTube video, or I can go and subscribe to some art class and learn. And but now, because we have so much technology that's attached to, you know, giving background and giving like educational facets to things that we love. Like if I want to make a song like Skrillex, I can go look up how to sound like Skrillex and sound like Skrillex.
Yeah.
But now it's forcing people, like if you want to create your own lane or create your own path or break through on, you know, a certain art piece or a certain record, you really have to push yourself to like, okay, like this may be so out there and it may not be received by everybody, but some people are gonna really be intrigued by it, you know? And I think that is what will ever more so keep, I think, AI on the side, because there will always be individuals who will keep pushing past that borderline of things that have been previously done.
Right.
100%.
Yeah, and I think those are my favorite compliments. You know, if someone comes up to me and says like, oh, that looks like you. Yeah. Or that I could tell that was yours. I'm like, oh, God, that's so nice, because you can think that you're doing something different, or, you know, you're saying you want it to come across some certain way, but you don't really know because you're so in it sometimes, that when you get feedback from other people that are like, yeah, this is, I could tell it's something about you that I recognized. I'm like, yeah.
Oh, absolutely. It's the same thing. It's like whether you're listening to music, watching a film, you're right. Like they all definitely, it's like they're all in their like own Venn diagram, but there's this middle circle where like so many of the same concepts as far as like can you recognize this is me? Can you look at it and see it's me? Can you listen to it and see it's me? You know, all of that falls in the same little bubble. And that's why I think art's like amazing, and why I feel like I can sit down with people like yourself where like I have no recollection or knowledge or education in artwork whatsoever, but we have a lot of the same topics that we can discuss and talk about.
Yeah.
No, it's amazing.
Yeah. And I feel like, you know, tip of the iceberg. Like, you know, I like to think that I've found a little bit of my voice, but there's so much more.
There's always going to be more too. Yeah. And it's hard having to let go, because I know that feeling of letting go, because it's like I'll hold on to a song for a year. I'll hold on to an EP for a year, and it's like you at one point just have to let it go, because if you don't ever let it go, no one's going to be able to see it. Right. You know, you can have the most beautiful artwork just in your studio. Yeah. And if you just can't ever let it go and let people interpret it how they want to interpret it, it's like almost like a disservice to like your own efforts at one point, you know.
That's such a good way to think about
it. Which is just crazy. But where can we see your art now? Like around the Denver greater area? I know you're downstairs.
Downstairs, I am also showing at Abend Gallery right now, which is exciting. I have a show coming up with the Babe Walls girls at Banshee.
Exciting. Banshee. Okay, that's like 100 feet from my door, so I'll be there.
So Women's History Month, woo woo.
Yes.
I'm currently in the process of doing a couple murals over at Spark Dispensary, which is such a cool space. There's a bunch of art in there right now.
Where is that at?
It is, you know what, that's an excellent question. It's like 40th, and it's pretty far north.
Okay.
Like northeast-ish.
I'll have to check it out. That's cool.
Of downtown. Yeah.
Okay, sweet.
Really cool. Yeah. And then I have, you know, a sprinkling of murals around town. I've really set the intention this year of, you know, I love Denver and I want to create more work here, but sort of doing work outside of the city and really sort of getting my feelers into the rest of the country and different major cities. And I think, you know, it's so important to see what other people are doing and let it influence me. And so I'm really excited for that.
That's so exciting. Thank you so much for coming on, Marissa.
Thank you so much for having me.
This was such a wonderful conversation.
Such a good time.
Cool. I'm going to link all of your stuff below, and then now everybody knows where to come and check you out.
Cool.